Story 1. I have worked quite a few part-time jobs over the years to help with the budget. Some in bigger cities, some in smaller ones. This story takes place in a large city where each neighborhood is actually a small town. The city is really a bunch of small towns that grew until they touched. This job was almost 20 years ago, so the dialogue is from memory. One part-time job was evenings weekends at a liquor store with a drive-through beer/soda/wine lane. We could only sell beer and wine at the drive-through. If a customer wanted liquor or more than a set amount of wine, he had to park and come inside. We could not carry liquor to the car for you either. The state had a lot of nitpicky rules like that, and I had just completed the mandatory training needed to sell alcohol, so the rules were fresh in my mind. The store had been in business for decades, and the manager was the owner's slacker of a son. He was happy to bend or flat out break the laws regulating alcohol sales if it meant money for him. He didn't care if the consequences would be the problem of the person who rang them up. That didn't impact him directly, so it didn't matter. Manager had all sorts of special customers that were supposed to be treated a certain way that broke the regulations. I think the fine for selling liquor out of the drive-through was more than the store earned in a year. I was a stickler for the rules, so if the manager wanted to break or bend the rules, he could do it. It wasn't like we got any reward for breaking the rules for manager's special customers. They had a hard time finding employees because manager had a reputation in the area and few people wanted to work for him. So refusing to bend over backward for manager's special customers was not going to get me fired. No one told me that we had an unusual customer several afternoons during the week and twice on the weekends. This customer was abominable. Rude, stinky, very prejudiced and sexist. He told the crudest jokes to the female employees and kept trying to insist that we go find a park with him like we were ladies of the night. He wasn't just any cop, but the chief of police in a nearby section of the city. Most of the small cities within the larger city had their own police, fire, etc. The first night I saw him, sissy co-worker and manager's niece great person told me to just watch and stay quiet. She sold him 2 cases of beer and he went away. I noticed that his back seat area was filled to the point where you had no place to put your feet. She said to never say anything negative to him and to sell him whatever he wanted, no matter if he walked inside or not. She never gave me a clue as to why. A few weeks later, I was working alone on a Sunday at about noon. Business was always slow at this time. The chief pulls into the drive-through. Me, hi, how are you today? What can I get for you? Chief, I'm fine and so are you. I need a bunch of stuff and it needs to go into the trunk. Me, let me grab a pencil and pad so you don't need to repeat it. Just a second. I grab them. What all do you need? Chief lists various types of beer, wine, liquor, mixers, and some candy. Me, is that all? Am I allowed to sell this to you through the drive-through, or do you have to come in for the harder stuff? Chief got out of his car while it was sitting in the drive-through lane. He walked up so close he loomed over me. Me, is that all? Am I allowed to sell this to you through the drive-through, or do you have to come in for the harder stuff? Chief, do you think I would break the law, that I would ever embarrass myself, my city, or the Marines this way? What the Marines had to do with anything, I still have no idea. Me, of course I don't think that. I am just asking because the state training was unclear about this. I guess it must be fine. After all, you are an officer of the law. Just promise me that if I make a mistake, it will stay between you and me. The training was not unclear, but I felt unsafe around him and didn't want to argue with him or make him angry. Chief, it better be fine. Stop backing up. He was walking forward toward me, and he was very tall and imposing, not in a good way. I need to see if you are recording anything. Put your arms out from your body, level with your shoulders. Well, I see you are not wearing a wire or a bra. Maybe I should open your shirt a little and have some fun. I ought to take you back into that storeroom to have my fun with you. No one would ever know. Me, I am so sorry. I don't think Father would approve. I am only here on Sundays at this time because I can go to Mass earlier. If I was single, I would be happy about it, but it would mean breaking one of the 10 Commandments. Chief had a rosary hanging from his rear view mirror and Catholic decals on his official vehicle. It was a mostly Catholic area of the city, and this wasn't unusual. I was scared of him and just saying anything to try to keep him away from me. I cannot tell you how imposing and awful this man was. I really thought he was going to take me back to the storeroom and assault me. Chief, well, it might be worth it. Be quick about getting my order, and I will leave you alone this time. You should wear a bra that pushes you up when you know I am coming by. I nodded at him and rushed to get what he wanted and to ring him up. I just wanted him gone at that point. I felt very scared but knew we needed the income. I had to figure out a way not to be near the guy again and still keep my job. Sissy came in to take over about 2 hours later. She could see that I was a mess, and she wanted to know what happened. We had no customers, so I told her. Chief came in and wanted a ton of stuff. Cases of beer, lots of wine and hard liquor, mixers, all of it. He insisted on getting it through the drive-thru. I asked if that was okay because the training wasn't clear. He got out of his car and kept getting too close. Eventually, he told me to stop moving after he backed me up into the wall. He said he had to pat me down to see if I was wearing a wire. It sure felt more like feeling me up. I was in tears and Sissy was hugging me to help me calm down. She asked if that was all. He said he should open my shirt for fun, that he should take me into the storeroom and no one would ever know. Sissy, this is why we give him what he wants and we never question him. We don't want him to get out of the car because he tried this with everyone. He doesn't know we have cameras everywhere now. No sound, but cameras. I am not sure what we can do about it, but I will think on it. I didn't see Sissy for over a week, just how our schedules worked. I was really nervous when I was alone in the store. I didn't feel unsafe in the store until my experience with the chief of police. I started thinking about how to get rid of a chief of police. I did some research and found out that the cops in any other jurisdiction could pull him over and/or arrest him. Our neighborhood was announcing the summer festival season with lots of signs about drunk driving. Summer is when every local Catholic church has a big festival with games and rides and things. It is the big fundraiser for the church. Of course, the church festival would not be the same without tons of beer, at least not in this area. I walked over to the police station one day, it wasn't far. I asked an officer if they would be interested in pulling over a police officer from another district if the officer was clearly drinking. The officer, good cop, wanted to know more, but would definitely be interested in the situation. I work at the drive-thru and liquor store. I have a customer that I am afraid of, and who breaks a number of laws. He is high-ranking in a different part of the city, not our neighborhood. I do not have warrants or a criminal record. I am not accusing him to get out of trouble. Good cop, let's go in here and get some coffee and talk this out. A couple of nights a week, at a certain time, and again during our slowest period on Saturdays and Sundays, a high-ranking cop drives through. He insists that he can buy as much of anything that he wants, and he doesn't have to come inside for any reason. The first time I was alone when he came through, I asked if he needed to come inside to get the liquor and amount of wine he wanted. I was not rude or mean. I even said that maybe I didn't understand the training and the loopholes in the laws. Good cop, do you know that just being a cop doesn't mean the laws change for him? Yes. But that isn't all he did. When I questioned him, he got out of the car and started backing me up against the wall. He put his hands all over me, supposedly to check for a wire. Then he said he should take me into the back room for so-called fun. I am really afraid he is going to sexually assault me. I can't think of a way to stop it, but to get him arrested for all the drunk driving he does. I won't make a complaint about the sexual assault. I cannot go through that. Good cop, what do you mean by all the drunk driving he does? Does he do it a lot? He is always drinking when he drives through. Usually he has a beer in his hand when we get to him. I have seen him go through up to 3 beers if he has to wait for 1 or 2 other cars before we get to him. He never buys under a case of beer unless he buys whiskey with it. I named the whiskey he usually bought, but I can't remember it now. His back seat area is filled with empties every time we see him. The beer he buys is usually put on the front seat next to him. He opens a can before he leaves, saying he wants to make sure it is good. The only time he has us put all of the beer in the trunk or back seat is if he orders a soda. Then he orders whiskey and pours some of the soda out to make room for the whiskey. Good cop, these are very serious allegations against someone you say is a high-ranking police officer. Are you sure you want to make them? You may be investigated if this goes to trial or disciplinary proceedings. Are you willing to go through that? Me, I am afraid that this man will assault me. I cannot go through that. I will testify about his drinking and driving. I won't say or do anything about the sexual assault threats. I just cannot go through that, so I need to stop it before it happens. Good cop, what are you afraid we will find if we investigate you? What secrets are you afraid of us finding? Me = I am a 30-something mother of 3 children. I don't have a wild life. I have been happily married for over a decade. I haven't ever been in legal trouble. I don't drink, do illegal substances, go to inappropriate parties, or do any of those types of things. I am not against social drinking, but I don't drink. I have some debt, but who doesn't? There isn't anything I can think of that you could dig up. Do what you have to. Good cop, how can you prove what he does? You are not in the car with him. How do you think we can pull him over and arrest him? Me, he has a routine. He pulls in, drinks whatever beer he has with him, orders what he wants, and often asks me to throw away his recently emptied cans 1-3 depending on how long the line is. Why he wants me to throw those cans away, I have no idea. His back seat is usually filled with empties. We give him whatever he orders because we do not want him to get out of the car. I am not the only employee he has said awful things to. Once he pays, he turns right out of the parking lot. Then he turns left about a mile down. I know because I was headed the same way a few times. His car says he is from Somerview and that it is the chief's car. It even has his name painted on it. I don't know how old the empties in his car are. I do know that I can set his beer cans aside if you need them for fingerprints or something. Good cop, he is the chief of Somerview? Wait here, I need to get our chief. Do not go anywhere. I was expecting them to have to get the top officers involved. I didn't expect the sort of excitement. About 30 minutes later, the chief of police of my neighborhood came in. I know who he is because he married some cousin of mine, but I have never had any real relationship with him. We said hi to each other and made the usual, "How is your family?" stuff for a moment or two. I had a lot of family in this area, why ye too much some days. Chief of police, I hear you have some information about Chief. Why are you coming to us with this? Me, he makes me feel very unsafe each time he comes through the drive-thru. He also is drinking every time I see him come in and leaves with a drink in his hand. I have kids and family in this neighborhood. He is going to kill someone. He has been inappropriate with every female employee at the store. I feel threatened that if I don't sell whatever he wants, in whatever amounts, to him through the drive-thru, then he will get out of the car and at least threaten to assault me. I want you to do something about his drunk driving so that he won't have a reason to come into our drive-thru several times a week. Chief of Police, if I look into you, am I going to find that you have a private relationship with him? Or other things that would discredit you? Me, of course not. I wouldn't go near the guy for any reason except I have to be polite at work. Also, I am married happily. Chief of Police, from what you have said, this looks like an easy case of drunk driving, especially if we can catch him with a lot of booze and empties on him. We would need to have someone in store for you to hand the empty cans to if we plan to use that as evidence. How comfortable would you be with an officer inside the store? Me, I would be fine with it as long as the officer was out of sight and out of uniform. If you are looking for empties, then Wednesday would be good. If you want to catch him in the car with a ton of alcohol, be there on Sunday about noon or Saturday about 2-3. I went through security tapes to find out when he usually comes by. You would probably have to talk to manager after the fact to get those. Or talk to C. She is the one who really runs things. Why are you all so excited over this? Chief of Police. His behavior has caught the attention of quite a few people lately. I cannot go into it, but we are very interested in him. I also just don't like him. He hit on my wife at a function we had to attend. I left after writing and signing a statement. I didn't hear anything for several weeks, and I was getting frustrated. Chief was still coming in. He was still drinking while driving, and he kept making awful comments to me. One Sunday, about 2 months after I made my statement, Chief came in. He ordered even more than his usual Sunday amount. Less than a minute after he left our parking lot, I heard sirens. A lot of them. I hoped they were arresting Chief, but I didn't know for sure. The next morning when I took the kids to school, all the moms were buzzing. Apparently Chief got himself pulled over for driving while intoxicated. They found his beer, wine, and hard liquor. They also found illegal substances. This led them to search his home, where they found unregistered guns and information about other illegal things. He was involved with corruption and even inappropriate material involving minors, to name just a couple of things. I spoke to the chief of police a week or two later. I would not need to testify. They had plenty of other people who were willing to testify. Chief had become a real liability for those who backed him in his town. Many of his close friends ended up testifying against him to save their own behinds. Chief went to prison. I am not sure where or how long. I just know that it was an ugly situation. Chief's wife also left him. The news made a huge deal of the whole mess. I still am thankful that my name was kept out of it. Story 2. I worked for a company for 14 years. I loved working there for 12 of those years. There were 2 main parts to the job. The first part was the sales side of things, which took place away from the office at the customer's location. This involved a lot of driving and, on a couple of occasions, flying abroad to work face-to-face with the customers to deliver a high-quality product. We weren't the cheapest, but we offered a superior product, and I was the best employee when it came to delivering it. I consistently received excellent reviews from customers for my personal style of service and how I executed their vision. I generated a huge amount of repeat business, and new clients often came through word-of-mouth recommendations based on their experiences with me. The second part of the job was the office work, which was my weaker side. I hated cold calling potential customers using numbers I found in the phone book. When customers initiated contact with us, I was fine with answering the phone, but I wasn't great at making calls myself. This was the only part of my job that I wasn't particularly good at. In the office, I wasn't asked to make any calls. Instead, I prepared products, designed new ones, and trained new staff members, which eventually became one of the biggest parts of my job. I was also the problem solver, helping out whenever and wherever needed and filling in for sick employees when I could. I liked the owner and manager, and I got along well with my coworkers. All in all, it was a great job that I was really good at and took pride in. The company had been doing well, and the owner had gradually expanded the business over the 12 years since I started. I joined about 3 months after he founded the company, so I was part of its growth. I worked out of my local office, but often traveled to other areas to train their staff. I was also loaned out to other companies to help train their employees. At one point, I was even a guest lecturer at a university, teaching medical students how to explain complicated concepts to people who didn't have the same base knowledge. After 12 years, I was on a decent salary, not huge, but I was happy with it. Then, the owner decided to sell off part of the company. He was selling the area where my local office was located. He told me that he would love for me to remain as his employee, but I would have to work from a different office. This would either require me to move or quadruple my daily commute. The other option was to stay in my current office but work under a new boss. I chose the latter. Before the new owner bought the company, she worked alongside the staff for a couple of weeks to see how we operated. None of us knew she was about to buy the company at the time. We thought she was just another employee shadowing us to learn. She even came with me on assignments in the field and saw my abilities firsthand. When the sale was announced, and we were informed that she was the new owner, everyone was surprised. She made some significant staffing changes. The manager left to start her own business since the new owner planned to also be the manager. Many staff members were let go. Only the secretary, a couple of newer hires, and I were kept on. The new hires were on the lowest wages, not salaried. Anyone who had reached a decent wage level was let go. Since almost everyone was on a contract with flexible hours, she was able to do this. Technically, it was a new company, but for the customers, it was the same old business. The company still had the same trading name. The only real difference was a new owner and a different registered business name. As far as the customers were concerned, nothing had changed. My job in the first few months after the sale was to train the remaining staff to replace the more experienced ones who had been let go. I recommended a couple of new hires I had worked with in the past. I was open and honest with the owner, letting her know that one of them was a close friend and the other was my girlfriend. Both were more than qualified for the work and happy to join. My friend had recently returned to the country after a year of traveling, while my girlfriend could only work during school holidays since she worked at a school. The owner interviewed them both and hired them, as we needed the staff. Over the next 2 years, business started to decline. The reason was simple. The new owner tried to maximize profits by increasing prices while decreasing the quality of the product. For new customers, this wasn't as noticeable. They just thought we were expensive, and the product wasn't great. But for long-term customers who had been with us for over a decade, it was obvious. They were paying more for lower-quality products. So, the owner doubled down and raised prices again. As a result, 95% of our old customers left us, and new customers almost never became repeat clients. Complaints skyrocketed. During this time, staff turnover was ridiculous. People left after a few months when they realized that the minimum wage they were earning wasn't worth it. Under the old owner, new employees earned around 2.5 times the minimum wage, which made them care about their jobs and want to stay. My girlfriend eventually quit. My friend remained, but was looking for something new. Then, I got an unexpected phone call. The owner needed me to come to the office. I had just finished working on location with a customer, and my next appointment was in 2.5 hours. It was a half-hour drive away, while the office was about an hour and 10 minutes from both locations. If I went back to the office, I would only have about 5 minutes there before leaving again. My mileage was paid in addition to my salary, so I was actually saving the company money by not returning. Also, parking was difficult around the second location, so I intended to arrive early, find parking, and read a book. However, the manager insisted I return to the office, so I did. When I arrived, the owner handed me a letter informing me of a disciplinary meeting scheduled in a few days. I was allowed to bring a witness if I wanted. This completely threw me off. I was the best employee. I read through her list of complaints about my performance and started preparing my defense. At the meeting, I decided not to bring a witness. Instead, I secretly recorded the entire conversation on my phone, which was legal where I lived. The boss's witness was a friend of hers, someone she met in a yoga class and hired for an office role after firing the long-standing secretary. Every point she raised, I could counter. They ranged from the trivial. You were unavailable to work for a week in August. I booked that week off to attend my cousin's wedding on the other side of the country and turned it into a holiday. To the absurd. You were late for work on May 12th. Is that the day my car broke down, and I called the office to let you know? I don't know. I do. Here's the receipt from the garage, dated May 12th. To outright lies. She accused me of breaking health and safety regulations while delivering a product to a customer. I hadn't broken any rules. I had been doing this job for 14 years, and she had seen me do this many times without ever raising an issue. She even had me train staff in this specific delivery method because it wasn't a problem. After going through her list, she told me that she didn't want to lose me. but she couldn't justify keeping such a poor employee at my current salary. She gave me two options. I could sign a flexible hours contract and work for minimum wage, or she could fire me with 2 weeks' notice. I countered that she would have to give me 12 weeks' notice, as my contract guaranteed me 1 week's notice for every year of employment, up to a maximum of 12. She argued that I had only been her employee for 2 years, as I had worked for the previous owner before that. I pointed out that, by law, the takeover counted as continuous employment. I even quoted the exact law that backed me up. She asked for a 30-minute break to think about her offer and called her lawyer. When she returned, she informed me that since she was firing me for gross misconduct, she didn't have to give me any notice. She offered me the option to switch to a flexible hours contract or be fired immediately. However, she generously offered me 2 weeks' notice if I chose to leave. I asked for a few hours to go home and think about it, which she allowed. I knew the real reason she wanted me to stay for those 2 weeks was because one of our remaining bigger customers had a delivery scheduled with me during that time. They only wanted to work with me. The owner had tried sending other staff in my place on several occasions, but there were always issues. It wasn't the staff's fault, it was just a very specific delivery for a difficult customer that had to be perfect. So, this customer only dealt with me. I called the office and declined the offer of a flexible hours contract. I also said I would not be returning to work. The owner panicked and insisted she needed me for those 2 weeks. I acted confused, saying I was just trying to think about what was best for the company. After all, if I was being fired for gross misconduct, I shouldn't be trusted to deliver products safely. However, if she wanted to rethink the gross misconduct claim, I'd be willing to work my 12 weeks' notice. She was left with 2 choices, 0 weeks or 12. She chose 12. For those 12 weeks, I worked as I had for the past 14 years. I didn't slack off or badmouth the company. I continued training new staff and delivering products in my usual exceptional way. I also contacted a lawyer specializing in employment law. During those 12 weeks, the owner barely spoke to me. She resented the fact that I knew my legal rights and didn't fall for her lies. She hated that I could defend myself. She was petty too. She accidentally broke my mug in the kitchen and paid for all the staff to have a spa day except for me. I was even asked to work on my day off to answer the phones while everyone else enjoyed the spa. Nobody realized I wasn't invited until they got there and saw I wasn't with them. Here's the thing. I'm a big guy with a beard and no interest in spa days. If she had offered it, I would have thanked her and declined. But by excluding me, she made herself look terrible. For the last 2 weeks, I trained my friend to replace me. On my final day, the owner had nothing planned, not even a card after 14 years with the company, 2 years with her. However, the office assistant manager, who had become a friend, got me some gifts and had to give them to me after the boss had left for fear of backlash. The day after my final day, 2 things happened. First, my friend, who I had been training to replace me, quit. He was on a flexible hours contract and didn't need to give any notice. He was unhappy with how the owner had treated me and didn't want to do my salaried job for minimum wage. He hadn't told me he planned to leave and showed up at my door in the middle of the day to let me know. Second, the owner received a letter informing her that I was pursuing legal action against her for unfair dismissal. My lawyer and I had arranged for the letter to be delivered the day after I left. According to the office assistant, the owner went pale and started crying before leaving to call her lawyer. She tried to deny my claims of constructive unfair dismissal, arguing that she fired me for gross misconduct. She even tried to come up with more reasons for letting me go. The truth was, the company was making less money due to her business practices, and I was the only salaried employee. I had evidence that I was a great employee, and that she had asked me to switch to a flexible hours contract. At first, she denied this because it didn't align with the gross misconduct accusation. But once my lawyer provided hers with a transcript of the meeting and a copy of the recording, she realized she was in trouble. Still, she dragged the case on for over a year, hoping the legal fees would make me drop it. Little did she know, My lawyer was working on a no-win, no-fee basis, while hers wasn't. Eventually, she settled out of court. The aftermath. The office assistant manager, who had become a friend, quit a few months after I left. She couldn't stand how I was treated and didn't feel safe working for such an untrustworthy boss. Several former customers contacted me personally, asking why I had left the company. Apparently, the owner was telling them I had quit. I told them I had been fired for cost-cutting reasons. Many moved their business elsewhere, and several even offered me jobs. One customer offered me a part-time position and offered to pay for me to attend college to earn the necessary degree for a full-time job with them. It was a lovely offer, but they were too far away for me to commute, and I wasn't ready to move. In the end, I found a new job in a different industry where many of my skills transferred over. I now earn more, work fewer hours, and have better bosses. The business is struggling. The public health crisis left the owner desperate for cash. She canceled orders and refused to refund customers, citing an act of God clause in the contracts. The company's reviews on social media have plummeted. Most of the staff have left. While the business is still operating, it's barely holding on. Story 3. A high school friend and I were just reminiscing about this, and since my train is delayed, I thought I'd share. Back in school, he and I were assigned to work on a geography project about plate tectonics. My friend absolutely hated geography and had a pretty sour relationship with the teacher. On the other hand, I was quite good at the subject and even enjoyed it. I suppose that's why he chose me as his project partner. After a few days, I noticed that he hadn't done any work on the project whatsoever. When I confronted him about it, he basically said, "Look, I have no intention of doing anything for this project. Please just get me a good grade. I would only hold your grade back otherwise." Of course, I was annoyed and told him this plan wouldn't work. I had always been pretty good at writing, especially in our native language, and I had a very distinctive writing style, even as a teen. So, if I did everything myself, the teacher would easily recognize it. However, my friend didn't take this warning seriously and brushed me off, expecting me to do the entire project by myself. This is where the idea for some mild revenge started brewing. I looked ahead in the school agenda and noticed that we had a big economics project coming up soon, at least 3 times bigger and more important than the geography one. I despised economics and was awful at it, not least because it involved very little writing. My friend, however, excelled at it. Always the entrepreneurial type, economics was by far his best subject. We were part of an 8-person friend group, although he was my best friend. So, I informed the other 6 friends of my plan and convinced them to form pairs so that my friend would be stuck with me for the economics project. The day we got the economics assignment, my friend seemed a bit annoyed that he had someone as incapable at economics as I was for his partner. A few hours later, it was time for geography class. I had turned in our project the weekend before, and as I predicted, the teacher called me out of the classroom to discuss it. My friend seemed terrified. It turns out we had gotten an 8. 5 not bad for one person doing a 2-person job. The teacher voiced his suspicion that I had done all the work since he recognized my writing style. He gave me the opportunity to throw my friend under the bus and leave him with a 1/10. I looked my teacher straight in the eyes and said, "You've got it all wrong, sir. My friend was a huge help throughout the entire project. We just agreed that I would put everything on paper to keep the writing consistent. You know I can be a bit of a control freak when it comes to language, haha." The teacher then called my friend over and asked if what I said was true. My friend, surprised and remorseful, backed up my story, so we both got the high grade. After class, my friend literally hugged me and thanked me profusely for being such an awesome friend. I wasn't angry anymore, but I wasn't about to let him get away with it completely either. So, I told him, "Easy there, buddy. You really messed me up with this. The least you could do to repay me is to make sure we both get at least an 8. 5 on that economics project, because just in case you haven't picked up on it yet, I have zero intention of doing anything for that assignment. I'll leave it in your capable hands. I would only hold you back anyway." My friend looked at me for a second, then started laughing. He apologized for his behavior and ended up doing the entire economics project, which was so much more work, while I just sat back, enjoying my teen life. And he delivered. He got us a perfect 10, which actually raised my overall score to a passing grade. There's no real villain in this story if you ask me, but some lessons were learned. We had a great friendship, and I'm glad we have situations like this to laugh about now.